Welcome to The Pilot Life, the show where we sit down with people who are passionate about aviation. My name is Brendan. I've been a commercial airline pilot for over 20 years, and in that time, I've heard some incredible stories. This is the show that I share those with you. Welcome on board. All right, welcome to The Pilot Life. As we like to say, another week, another living room. Today, I'm sitting across the table from Mr. Brad Tilden. Brad, welcome to the show.
Thanks very much, Brendan.
Brad is, I'm going to say, Brad was a paperboy.
Yes, indeed.
He worked at Arby's fast food.
You've done some research.
You worked for the Amtrak train station.
I did.
Washing dishes.
Yeah, I did.
And then...
I was actually on board the train.
Oh, you were?
Yeah.
You were. And then, of course, a little bit later on in life, CEO of Alaska Airlines and also a fellow pilot.
Yes.
So always good to be in the same room with a fellow pilot, someone who's passionate about aviation. I don't know if I told you this, but maybe when we talked on the phone, when I had this crazy thought of having this podcast, I sent out 2 emails, right? First like dream guest was John Travolta, right?
And he said...
I have not heard anything back yet. So she's watching. Second one was to you.
Oh, my gosh.
And the reason why I think that is because we all have interesting roads that we take. I knew that you were a pilot, and then I knew that you've reached kind of what most people would consider maybe the pinnacle of business success, maybe, right?
I got very lucky.
Yeah. I just think that's a really interesting story.
Yeah.
And I can't wait to share it.
Well, I'm looking forward to getting... You and I know each other a little bit, not all that well. I'm really looking forward to spending some time and getting to know you better, Brendan. I
first met you. You came up front on a Q400, and I was flying the shuttle flight from Portland to Seattle.
Right? Did I behave?
You had been talking with the Timbers about doing some kind of business. But why don't we kind of go back a little bit?
Sure.
Where maybe this passion for aviation started, maybe kind of a little bit about your childhood. I know that your dad has a really interesting story too. And
yeah, it's hard, and you have these memories, and you're not totally sure if you embellished them or sort of enhanced them over the years or not. But I do. My family was in Huntsville, Alabama, and until I was 13, and I do remember being a little kid, and even at 63, I'm a kid that loves field trips, especially if there's like machinery and equipment and stuff like that involved. But we went out to the Huntsville airport, and there was a brand new 727 on the ramp, and I just remember being really taken by it, like, wow, that's pretty neat. I'd like to learn more about those. And anyway, then things sort of, the seeds planted, and it gets nourished and it grows over time.
Yeah. What was your family doing out in Huntsville?
So my parents have a real interesting story. They were both Canadian. He was an engineer. He bounced around a little bit. I had 2 brothers born in Oklahoma. I was born in Texas, but he really got his career started in Alabama working for Boeing on the space program.
Yeah, and he was involved because I did a little bit of reading about him. He was involved in the rover, right?
He was the little moon buggy, the car that cruised around on the moon.
That's incredible.
It really was. I was a little guy. Like when it was moving around the moon, I was 10 or 11 or 12 and had no sense of how neat that really was. I mean, you're awful proud of your dad at that age, but looking back, I'm so proud of what he did.
Yeah, and he also, I think, faced a little bit of struggles in his own life. Yeah,
he sure did. So the whole story is he got polio when he was 19 or 20, and he was one of the last people in North America to get polio, and he had no use at all of his right leg. If you look, he's passed 10 or 12 years ago now, but his right leg was just nothing there, really, no muscle, no anything. And his left leg had just a little bit of strength, but him and my mom are together, not quite married yet, and they're saying, hey, we're in trouble in Saskatchewan with this kind of makeup, the ice and snow in the winter. So he went down, I think he got his undergraduate in Saskatchewan, but went down to Tulsa, got a master's degree at Oklahoma State, and sort of made a career for himself. And those days, these days, people were tough in those days, right? Yeah. There wasn't a government program to take care of you or anything like that. He's like, I'm in real trouble here if I don't find a way to provide for myself and my family. So he got the engineering thing going, and he he and my mom did a great job. Bunch of kids.
Yeah.
My mom was Catholic. He wasn't really. He was, but they honored the Catholic tradition, started making babies, and my brothers, they did a great job as parents. All my brothers and sisters are fantastic.
I also come from a large Irish.
Oh, there you go.
Family. I was the last of 8 kids.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
So we got that in common.
we know it. Yeah. So he's out in Huntsville. He's working on the moon buggy.
Yeah.
Which I think Apollo 15 was the first one that they actually used that up there. And he was can you tell that story about that silver Snoopy? I know that I said because I was really excited to see that he was given that. Like,
you made me really happy when you discovered that, because it made me want to think about it again. But it was. I don't know a ton about it. I know my sister's got the letter in her house framed. It's framed and on the wall. But when either NASA employees or contractors are real involved in something important, they give them an award. They call it the Silver Snoopy Award or the Snoopy Award. And my dad and a couple of his colleagues were lucky enough to receive it.
Yeah, and it's gifted by the astronauts, which is what's a really special thing. Is the astronauts choose who they get to give that to.
That's well said.
That's incredible. So then what brings you guys out to Washington State?
That program ended. It was the space race it was just going crazy. But 72, 73, it shut. We'd gone to the moon, we'd cruised around, explored the moon, and the funding dried up, and it was over. And I think I don't. My parents didn't really talk to us, but I bet he was freaked out for a while. Like what's going to happen. But I remember they were looking at something with Boeing in Philadelphia. I think it was with helicopters. But I know he felt really fortunate to even be offered a job in Seattle, so he transferred out to Seattle with Boeing.
Had you done any flying back in Alabama at all?
No, none.
Okay.
At all. Yeah.
So you see a 727 when you're younger. Your dad's in the aerospace business.
Yeah.
I assume that there's rockets launching and stuff out there.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. So you get out to Washington. You're now a young man, teens.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And let's talk a little bit about the Boy Scouts, because I know that your dad was involved in that.
He loved Scouts. My mom too. There was 4 boys, 2 girls. It was a way for them to sort of, I don't know, just raise us the way they wanted to.
Yeah.
Anyway, he was Scoutmaster several times, or assistant Scoutmaster. He'd go to a lot. Some of the campouts were car campouts. Some of them were hiking. He obviously wouldn't do the ones that involved hiking, but all the Scout meetings and all the Scout Law, all that stuff, he really just ate it up, and he wanted us to eat it up too.
Yeah. When you were a kid, what did you want to be? When people say, "Hey, what do you want to be when you get older?"
I was. It's a great question, and I want to talk about it a little bit, because I was kind of directionless, truthfully. And kids these days, I mean, some need something to be optimistic and hopeful about, and some feel like they know exactly where they're going. But I don't know. I was a happy little kid. I was doing what I was doing, but I didn't think a lot about it. I was I was decent at math and algebra. I like sort of algebra story problems, and airlines actually have a lot of those in them. But I wasn't. I mean, I didn't appreciate history or English at all in junior high or high school. So I was in band, and this guy next to me, I basically said, "Well, what are you going to do next year?" And he said, "I think I'm going to go to Pacific Lutheran University and become a teacher." And I said, "Well, I think I'll do that too." And I got there. He didn't go. I fully expected him to be there. Yeah, he dissed me, but anyway, I went to school sort of with a notion that I would try to become a teacher, but that went away pretty quick.
Yeah. Where did the Amtrak trains come in? When did you
I'll tell you a story. I had this friend, his name's Jerry Lamar, say, "Hey, do you want to work for Amtrak this summer?" And I said, "Sure." And we went down and interviewed, and I could actually see the guy evaluating me as we went through, and it was like a scale of 1 to 5, and I got a lot of 3s, and we left that thing, and I said, "Jerry, thank you for trying, but this isn't going to happen." But it did happen, and we both got jobs. It was a great setup for a college kid. It was, I was a unionized employee, so paid really well. They were not. I mean, the airlines can be like this. They were not very on top of their scheduling and demand, so they ended up having all kinds of overtime available. So, for the first time in my life, had a couple of extra dollars in my pocket.
Yeah.
and cruising around and, drove by the Renton Airport and it said, Discovery flight, $20. And I said, I think I'll go do a Discovery flight and pulled in and it was in a 150 or 152 or something like that. And just loved it. I do remember going home and telling my parents and they said, "You're going to do what?" And I said, "No, I already did it." I took a flight this afternoon and I think I'm going to go back tomorrow and start lessons. And my dad was like, on the one hand, shouldn't you ask? But you're 18, but he was also really, really proud. He liked having polio. He sort of did live a tiny bit through the physical experiences that some of us kids had. And so it was fun.
What was it about that first flight that you liked? What was it about flying?
I remember just loving the sense of freedom. I to this day, I love closing the airplane door and putting the power forward and, lifting off the runway. It's, I remember my first solo like it was yesterday. I don't totally remember the first flight, but I'm just lifting off and things get smaller and things get quiet and, the engines, back then we didn't wear a headset, so the engine's noisy, but life does sort of quiet down and settle down.
Yeah.
It's a fantastic freedom that, especially all pilots, but especially general aviation pilots in this country, it's a fantastic freedom that we have, and I don't take it for granted.
I think anyone who has never done it should take a discovery flight just for the sake of seeing what it's like. Because most oftentimes they'll let you fly it too. They'll, get up in the air, and even if you have no interest in pursuing a flying career or even getting your license, just for once to say, I flew an airplane.
I know. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Totally.
So did you end up getting your private?
Yeah.
And your instrument rating too?
Yep. Yeah, but a little bit of the story. I got the private. So I think it was the summers of 80 and 81 or 81 and 82, something like that. I did it over 2 summers, but I think I started like July or something like that. So I didn't have enough time to get the whole thing done in one summer. But it was just the private, and it was I think these days a lot of people take more hours, but I was 45 hours or something. That's like
awesome.
That. And you're kind of a moron. I mean, there's a lot you don't know, but it's a license to learn.
Totally.
So you're going out doing that stuff. And 15 years later, I had 120 hours. It was expensive to fly.
Yes.
I got married. We had kids. We couldn't really justify it. So I'd go get current and fly for 5 or 10 hours. And then it's like, I got kids at home and I don't have you're just going to waste money. Right.
Right.
And then my flying really took off when our kids went to college and there was a little bit more money and more time.
Yeah.
And all of
Yeah.
that.
Those were the good old days, weren't they?
They were.
Struggling.
Oh yeah. There's truth in that.
It doesn't feel that way when you're in it.
Yeah.
You always want to get to that next point.
Yeah.
But then before you know it, you're at that next point and you're like, man, there is a lot of good in there.
Working hard, going to bed tired.
Yeah.
Going to work and, I totally agree with you, Brendan.
So you are at PLU.
Yeah.
You still have dreams of being a teacher here?
I mean, candidly, I think my mentality, we talked a little bit about my parents and my upbringing. I had this mentality that it was the early 80s and the economy wasn't great. Interest rates were like 16, 18%. It was, and I was like, I got to get something that I can get a job with. And I wasn't sure about education. I probably could have got a job, but my older brother was a bean counter. He was an accountant.
Okay.
And he'll probably listen to this podcast, but I apologize to him now. But if he can do that, I can do that. That's the power of the lesson. The reason I say that's the power of a role model. If you have someone that you can relate to and sort of, and I believe that with pilots too. If Brad can do that, I can do that. If Brendan can do that, I can do that. And I really appreciate you doing things like these podcasts because a lot of kids are going to. I hope.
Yeah.
Look at it, listen to it, and say, "Yeah, I could be a pilot. That's in my set of opportunities." It's like because honestly, as a kid, being a commercial airline pilot, never in a million years would I have seen that in the set of things that I could arise to. Because if I did, that's what I would have done for my career. Because I love flying.
Yeah. Well, where you are. And I think I said this in an earlier podcast with one of our guests, where you are, someone dreams about being there.
Totally.
And when I was flying that Cessna 150, I dreamed of flying that Cessna 172 because it was bigger and it had more power.
Right.
And then, a Cessna 182. Oh my gosh, that thing is, I never would be able to fly that, right?
Yeah.
And it is all about just knowing that it is possible.
Exactly.
And I think people may think that you were born with some kind of natural extra leadership ability and I think the importance of all of this stuff is to be like, we all have a story. We were all working at Arby's or paperboys or
I totally agree with what you're saying. And what you're doing is really important, sort of demystifying life for young people. And you know, it's one thing after another. It's like, and I was super lucky in my life, super blessed. And I mean, we're at the time of life that it's about helping the next generation. And you just want younger people to see that all these things are available to them.
Yeah. How did you do in school, in college?
You know, I did better. I mean, the honest truth is I did better in college. I think in high school, I got A's in math or A minuses or something like that, but I got B's and C's and the other stuff. And then college, I had an English teacher. His name's Chuck Bergman. He's just he actually said, "Hey, this is my freshman year, and I think I got a C minus on a paper or something like that." And he said, I went to see him. I didn't go see him to complain about the grade because I knew it was the right grade.
It's passing, right?
But I said, "Man, college is going to be long if it's all C minuses, you know." And he said, "Brad, I think I know what your problem is." And I said, "Oh my gosh," because at Highline High School, nobody knew what my problem was. And he said, "Yeah." He had a personality. He said, "This is really boring."
Yeah.
He said, "Like what I'm reading here is really boring." He said, "If you find something you care about and write about it, your grades will go up." And,
God, it's so perfect, right?
Yeah. And so then it's like, and I always thought about that. Like, don't just write. You're not writing I'm a little bit older than you, but it was back in the day. It was write 300 words. Yeah. Well, that's going to be boring, But write about something you care about. That might be interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember in flight school, my grades were outstanding, like straight A's.
Yeah.
But if you had seen what I got that first year of college when I wasn't working on what I wanted to be working on, I was put on the dean's list and not the good one. Right? I was down to like a 1.2.
Oh my goodness.
It's because that exact same reason. I wasn't working on what I was passionate about.
I know. And honestly, you and I are really just getting to know each other, but look at you now. You're a flight instructor. You're flying a 730. You're doing things like this that you don't have to do. You just got enormous initiative. You're a self-starter. It's awesome.
Well, if I can do it, anyone can do it. That's the whole point of this, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so you're at PLU, numbers guy, working on
accounting.
Okay, and then job offers start coming in?
Yeah, I got an offer from Price Waterhouse, which was a Big 8 accounting firm at the time. There's 4 now, but there were 8 then. And it was $17,000 a year. And I remember just thinking, life is over. I got everything is everything.
Made it.
We're there.
Yeah.
But you get married and have kids and you realize that it only goes so far. But no, that's how that happened.
Yeah. Then the job opportunity comes open for you at Alaska.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep. So and that's kind of a fun story. I was at Price Waterhouse for 7 or 8 years, 2 of them in Melbourne, Australia, where one of our kids was born. But we came back and the office was a little slow. But this woman at Alaska who had started at Price Waterhouse the same year as me, but she'd left after 3 years. She went to Alaska and she was in this role. And she called me and said, "Hey, Brad, I know you're a pilot. I'm pregnant. I'm going to have a kid and I'm going to be a stay-at-home mom. My job's available. Do you want to come interview for it?" And I remember slamming the door. And just to be fair, I loved Price Waterhouse. I was getting great exposure, lots of clients, but I sort of slammed the door shut and said, "What?" And anyway, so she invited me to come down and interview for her job, and that's how I got into Alaska.
So you got hired into the accounting department there?
Yeah, it was kind of into the bowels of accounting. In the old days we had, we sold liquor on the airplanes for real cash, and so envelopes come in with quarters in them and dollar bills and all of that. And we're sorting through all of that and doing payroll and accounts payable. And
well, this is what, the early 90s?
1991.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. There was a room, and this was actually it was a guy named Glenn Johnson who had a terrific career with Air Group, but he had revenue accounting. And this room was full of, they had a coat room with blue coats, and the employees could all go in and put the blue coats on. And the reason was the tickets all had that red carbon crap on the back of them, which you had all over your clothes at the end of the day if you didn't wear a red coat. And anyway, none of that exists today.
Yeah. So what was the state of Alaska Airlines when you got hired in 91?
Yeah, it's a great question. It was, I remember it had been profitable they were really proud of that for 19 or 20 years. Some years very, very skinny, but customer service was really good. I mean, that's a legacy inside the company. I think there was a huge sort of do the right thing quality to the company. So those were the strengths. It was rigid. It was a little hierarchical. Titles mattered a lot. If you got to a meeting as a junior person, you weren't expected to speak. There wasn't. People weren't overly relaxed, or that would be a little of my what I think we were at the time. It was on the important things like treating people right, doing the right thing. I'll tell you, in my entire career, a lot of finance people in their jobs, they get pressure to if not cook the books, change the accrual. I mean, there is a fair bit of judgment closing the books for a company, and you get pressure to make a landing in weather that you don't want to. It's like there is pressure, and like there was never an ounce of that sort of pressure at Alaska. So it was always. I think the values deep in the company were rock solid, but it just felt tight to me. It felt a little tight.
Do you see yourself kind of moving up? I mean, is the CEO thought even on the board here, or are you just thinking I'm going to be here for 30 years as an accountant? And
the CEO, definitely not. But there's one thing that I want to talk about at some point in time, and it's like what makes an airline work? And like at that point in my life, and is it algebra? Is it scheduling, buying the right type of equipment, scheduling it correctly, scheduling pilots well? And at that point in my career, I was really intrigued with the algebra. It's like, can I even understand this stuff? Like, how did we decide to buy MD? We actually put an order for MD-90s or MD-90s versus 737s, or should we consider bigger airplanes? A lot of people want to get 75s. Should we look at that? Or so anyway, there were no early aspirations of any bigger job, but I really liked trying to just figure out the algebra, and I always like an 8th grade story problem. That's sort of how I looked at it, and that kept me busy for 10 years.
So were you actively taking roles then that gave you a broader look into what the airline did? Because you could have just stayed purely in the accounting realm and not learned about these other things. How did you start to learn about, revenue management and scheduling? And because I assume it's an entirely different area.
I think it's well said. It's you get encouraged along the way. You have bosses that say, "Well, yeah, go fiddle with that." Like the whole economics of the mileage plan, and Bill Ayer said, "Yeah, go look into it." He said, It's not an accounting project per se, but it is sort of analytical. It's a numbers project. And he'd say, go look into that and sort of see what you can figure out. And so I think one of the things that good leaders do is they sort of create an environment where change is allowed. It's if you change the way you think about something, it's not that someone made a mistake. It's just that we got to compete with Southwest and all these other guys. We all got to be doing our best every single day.
Yeah. What was that one stat that you said that prior to deregulation, Alaska was number 24, 20?
Something like that.
Size-wise, right?
Yeah. The 25th, 6th, 7th largest airline, something like that. You're remembering this from a flight path or something like that, I bet. And then, depending on when, but I think we're the 5th largest airline now. Yeah. And I would ask our employees, how many airlines did we pass? And, usually, let's just say it was 27 and 5.
Yeah.
Usually get someone in the audience to say 22. And you'd say, And it changes a little bit on when you're looking at it, but the answer was none. We didn't pass one airline on the way from 27 to 5.
Yeah.
They all went out of business or merged or disappeared.
Incredible.
So, yeah. And everyone, when you say that, everyone, you can remember all these brands that aren't there anymore, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. So we're getting into the late 90s, early 2000s, right? And what's your current position here?
I was controller late 90s, I was controller. I became CFO in the early 2000s.
Okay. So in 2000,
Yeah.
Alaska had an accident.
We sure did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's your perception of losing an airplane
Oh my
and
gosh.
kind of how that changes?
That moment changed everything for our company. It was, we got called at like 4:30 in the afternoon. And I was actually with John Kelly at the time, who was the CEO, and his Barb Johnson, his executive assistant, came in and said, hey, you need to come into your office. And he said, well, why? And kind of all light and all that. She said, I think there's a real problem or something. So anyway, he gets called away, and just everything changed immediately. It was Flight 261 that we're talking about. It was en route from Puerto Vallarta to San Francisco. It crashed off the coast of California. It had a problem with the horizontal stabilizer. And it was horrible. It was, I need to remember some of these figures. I know there were 88 people on board. I believe there were 12 employees, and I don't remember the exact number, but a lot of people on buddy passes. It was like 25 or 30 people were sort of in our family. And so Ted Thompson was the captain. I knew him. I knew his wife. And it's like, it's surreal to see his name on the whiteboard. And I mean, it was very personal. We were small. So, I mean, everyone knew someone on the airplane. And the first few days is taking care of families, and our people did an amazing job. John Kelly did an amazing job. He basically said every airline has books on the shelf of an accident response plan, a family assistance plan, all of that. And we got the books out and everyone did it. But more importantly, he said, just go take care of people. And our people went down to California. They holed up in a hotel. Jeff Pinio, Ed White, a lot of these folks were leaders, and they just told our folks, go take care of the families. And they did. And I think many of those folks are still close today with people that families that they took care of. But then it becomes, what actually happened? But I think, everybody probably processes it their own way, but those are sort of moments of leadership. And I was an underling. I was watching, but John Kelly and Bill Ayer just sort of slowly worked it out and basically said, these were our customers. This was an Alaska Airlines flight. It's our fault. We're responsible. And they said, we're going to commit to be the industry's leader in safety. But I would imagine you feel that in your bones today as a pilot for Alaska, that you've got that you work for a company like that, and it's really important that and I might pause and you can say if you do.
No, I just I think what sticks with me is I just never want this to get lost.
No.
Right? And it's just so easy to get into the daily travel, and it becomes so routine and everything, but it can change in an instant.
I think the important thing about that, I think it is to make sure you learn from it. It is to make sure you do have a real commitment to safety, where you as a pilot, you've got the company behind you no matter what decision. We're not going to fly today. We're going to put the airplane, we're going to divert. Yeah. We're going to, you've got to know that you've got that, but mechanics have to know that. Everyone in the company has to know that. And I don't know, I'm really proud of Alaska, so I have a bias. But I think the other thing is it taught us to do things right, to not fake it, and certainly in the operations and safety arena. But I thought in whatever your job is, there's a way to do it. If you don't understand it perfectly, raise your hand. It's okay. It's for the most part, this isn't rocket science. We should be able to articulate how to close the books, or how to make a good hire of an employee, or how to construct a benefit plan, or how to schedule airplanes or do route planning. If you can just sort of say, I don't want to bullshit. I want to get this right. Can you help me? That's a culture where it rewards sort of it. The culture becomes, let's make it better. And I feel like that, like to the extent Alaska had success over the years, I think that learning of kind of humility, but also a drive to get it right, really helped us. And I hope so. Anyway,
I think pilots look at accidents and then they put themselves in that situation, right? And like, what would I have done? Did you find yourself doing that watching the senior leadership at Alaska as they kind of navigated through this? I guess what I'm asking is, do you feel like your own leadership benefited by watching other people?
For sure. For sure. I mean, I think there's a bigger concept that I think you're starting to talk about, but great leaders don't often have, sort of charmed lives where everything went perfectly along the way. Yeah. You learn a lot more from the tough things, from the things you screwed up, the things that didn't go as well. And I think you are right. You do watch other people and think about it a little bit, but for sure, for sure you learn from your own mistakes.
When you were dealing with a crisis, whether it was COVID or, whatever it was, what was your approach to stabilizing and then coming up with a plan? Did you have a certain, pilots often think, I know that you have this, weather's moving in here, I'm coming up with this plan to deal with this.
I'd never thought of the analogy you're using right now, but it probably was similar. COVID is the most recent one, and we could see, just to talk through that one a little bit. And it's fun to remember this stuff, but it's like, first, your bookings are off 20%. 25% or something, which is a lot. It's like normal for us would be up 5 or 6 or 7 would be sort of an average. And then if they're off 3 or 4, hey, whatever, weather's bad or people are doing something, off 5 or 10, there's something going on, off 25, like that's a lot. But then I need to remember some of these things, Brendan. It got to that we had negative bookings for 60 or 70. They weren't off, they were negative. We had more cancellations than bookings for 60 or 70 days. And there was no CARES Act or anything. We had a full expense structure and negative bookings for like 2 months. And then we actually had negative not all of our tickets are refundable, but for 25 or 30 days, we had negative cash flow. We were refunding more to tickets than new tickets. So we had negative cash flow on the revenue line and the expense line. And so but at first, you're just like, let's communicate with our people. Let's think this through. We did know, and the analysts start talking about you. We knew that we had a lot of cash. So we knew that burn rate, how many days do we have, and it was like 160, 180 days, something like it wasn't 3 years, but it was way more than most of our competitors. And so you start doing it. And then you probably remember something. We started cutting schedules, cutting expenses to the extent we could. We decided pretty early on we wanted our employees were a priority. We wanted to take care of them. But then you just start to work through it. It wasn't that far until, I remember this was February, March of 2020. The industry started meeting in Washington, D.C. in March of 2020 and starting to talk about a government package, which Alaska lobbied hard with all the other airlines for those packages. And it kept our employees on the payroll, so that when demand came back, and as you know, demand is back in spades right now. It's really hard to with pilots, pilot training, pilot currency. It's to go from 0 to 100 you're a pilot instructor, so you tell me, but it might take 3 years, to get up to speed. So anyway, we were able to keep people sort of ready to go for when the demand came back.
So what was the conversations that you would have, let's say, with your wife?
Yeah.
At night when you would come home from the office, and you've got 25,000 people hanging in the balance here.
Yeah. That is exactly how we thought of it. It was, that was the first lens. It always was our employees, what's going to happen. And I think, Brendan, you like the big decisions you got to get right. And I think a lot of times there is kind of a do the right thing aspect to this. And I don't know, we talked a little bit. I mean, here's what I remember. Like the go-to food when Brad has a bad day is spaghetti. So I remember going home, there was a lot of spaghetti and a little bit of red wine. So yeah, I don't remember. My wife was always enormously supportive. She was, always wanted to know. But in your life, you can get through a lot of things, a lot of hardship if you got people on your side. If you're doing it, together. If you're doing it on your own, it's going to be hard.
Yeah. I want to back up just a little bit. When did you kind of get that first inkling of, they may ask me to take over this ship here? What was that?
So Bill Ayer was my boss. He was he was just a terrific boss. And I remember, like, I mean, I thought of my dad, and like it was a station in life that never in a million years did I thought would happen or could happen. I love Alaska. I love our people. I'm so proud of what our people did. I mean, I know still what an honor and what a privilege it is and what a responsibility being a leader of a company like Alaska is. There was a lot of that, a lot of gratitude for even being considered, but a huge amount of, am I up for this? Do I have it in me?
Yeah.
Can I?
I just watched that new Blue Angel documentary, and the pilot who flies in the number one position, who kind of steers everyone else around, he kind of had this statement, like the first time he put on this, uniform, he's like, how am I gonna, just this, what you would think, well, yeah, you're a Blue Angel, of course, but it just kind of made me think of of this. I'm sure everyone has that.
They call it imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
Like I'm an imposter. I don't belong here.
Yeah.
Yeah. You got to figure out your own style, and you don't know it at that point in time.
What was your North Star during that? Like, what would you always fall back on?
I apologize for the way this sounds, but I think in a lot of situations there is a right thing to do. Of like, am I going to promote this person or not? Or is this something bad's happened? Is this person going to keep their job? Like what is right? What is good? They're like, what should, and honestly, just having the courage to try to think about that and try to do what is right. And airlines are the ultimate team sport. I mean, early in my career, I did think it was about the algebra, but late in my career, it's you can screw up all of that algebra if the people want Alaska. If Alaska's 25,000 people want Alaska to be a great airline, it will be a good airline. It will be a great airline. It doesn't matter what, you can screw up all of that stuff that you do. But if you get the algebra right and people don't want you to be a great airline that moment, it won't be a great airline. Mm-hmm. And so the magic of an airline is getting people working together. They're proud. I mean, like Brendan, you're someone that's proud of what they do. It's contagious. People want to be around them. I just read Sam Walton's book, Made in America. And he says, and I'll probably mess this up a little bit, but he said, once you get your people to care, and he's like, everyone cares about something, but care about Walmart, care about Alaska, care about us surviving, making it as a little guy, said you're off. I mean, you're off to the races once. And so that is a place I went to a lot of times is how do our people feel about this? Is it going to make them proud of us? Is it the idea of trying to make it right, trying to make it good, trying to make it something that will make your people proud to represent you? It matters.
We talked earlier about the challenges associated with like a airline merger.
Yeah.
Right. I heard something from John Maxwell I was listening to, and he's like, a good decision is important, but decision making is not as important as decision managing.
Yeah.
And that is, put a different way, like the decision I made to marry my wife 16 years ago was a good decision. But then through 16 years of hard work and partnership, we've pushed each other. Yeah. It turned that good decision into a great decision.
Congratulations.
Right?
Yeah.
And so in terms of the airline world and a merger, because you were the CEO during the merger of Virgin America, talk about how you came to that decision, and then how well do you think that was managed? Because a merger affects a lot of people.
Totally does. And I'm glad you asked about this, and I want you to push and get the whole truth out. It'll benefit everybody. But we came to the decision. As you know, we had a big competitor sort of move into Seattle and put up a pretty good fight against us. And Alaska's done terrific. I believe our market share is still the same or better than it was prior to that happening. But it made us feel more vulnerable. It made us feel like we need to scale up in this industry. We talked about the 27 to 5 or 6 or 7 or whatever. There are a smaller number of players that are bigger and have more might, more power than they used to. So we sort of adopted this perspective. And this stuff happens not over one night or one board meeting, but over a couple of years. But it first starts with, like, what Alaska does is useful. It's good to the world. We do have low fares. We have our people provide, you included, fantastic service. We make life possible for communities in Alaska. We make careers possible and college education. I mean, so we said, what we do is really good, and we shouldn't be sucked up. We shouldn't be a part of another airline. We should be here.
Right.
That's where it starts. And then we say, well, then we got to get bigger. And
Right.
so
that first part that you mentioned, that's just people come to you and say, hey, would you be willing to sell your company?
That happens all the time.
Yeah.
And that happens all the time. Alaska's very proud to be independent. But then you start saying, well, would I be in the driver's seat? And for a long time, you say, whatever, they're all Airbus or they're, it's this or that. And you find reasons not to do mergers. We got more convicted about it over time. We actually made an offer for a different company that didn't go anywhere. And then we got more serious about Virgin America. And I think we went through the process. We were successful and got it done. I think so you married Monica. That's what's done now, But then the question is, how do you make it work? And I'll just tell you, honestly, I look at it on the one hand, part of what we did I'm really proud of, and part I badly wish we had a do-over. I mean, when you do a merger, you've got to get to a single operating certificate with the FAA, single safety system, single maintenance system, single crew scheduling, single union contracts, single seniority list, single health plans, medical. I mean, there's all this real work that has to be done. And this is Brad's opinion. People may disagree, but I think our people did really well with that stuff. But I think with our people, like I personally made some mistakes. It's like we were going to that at that point in time, we were going to go from the 6th largest airline to the 5th. Alaska was flying to 13 cities in San Francisco, in California, but we weren't that big in LAX or SFO. And Virgin was very big in LAX.
Right.
They flew to New York City, Chicago. They flew to the biggest cities out of the biggest cities, and that was kind of their deal. And so we just saw upside. That's all we saw. And I know that you were with us at the time. We had these shows and told our employees what we're doing and why, but we believed it was going to be the best thing that ever happened to Alaska, and we told our employees that. And if I had a do-over, I would say this hopefully we're doing this for a good reason. We think it's going to be good for Alaska. We do need to get big, but this is going to be the hardest thing you've ever done in your life.
Yeah.
It's going to be, you're going to wonder why we did it. Your vacation schedule is going to change. Your bid position might change. When you upgrade from first officer to captain might change. I wish we talked about that. And then the other big mistake I made, and one of our union leaders called and said, hey, Brad, you need to personally be out in the airport, walking around, talking to people. He said, you know how you do that thing and go out to SeaTac and walk around and visit with people? He said, you need to be doing more of that. And I did do more of it, but I should have, in retrospect, all that integration stuff, I just sort of said, you guys have it. I'm just going to go remind our people why we're doing this, why it's important, and just sort of, I don't know, people want, I think people, you tell me, I think people want to believe, they want to be a part of the team, but you got to answer their questions. And when you're doing things that don't make sense to them, you need to change or explain. You just sort of got to be there and be working it through. But that's Brad's take. What you watched it from a different seat.
I think what I've learned is, especially from flying, is when I've got an issue with the aircraft that I'm flying, people want honesty.
Yeah.
They want hope that this flight's still going to go.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And maybe this is something where it's not going to go, but it's what they don't want is, like me just sitting up there silent and not telling them what's going on. Right.
Totally.
And I think that as humans, we often want to we don't want to hurt other people's feelings. It's okay to have difficult discussions. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to be a jerk about it.
Yeah.
But like people want to know.
Yeah.
And as soon as they don't know, or they feel like they were kind of misled, then that's where the hard feelings come.
I think I think you're making a great point, and I think honestly I probably could have done more of that myself, and I definitely could have made it. I don't know. I think sometimes leaders do feel the need to be. I don't think anyone deliberately misleads anybody, but they feel the need to be put together, tied up, have put a bow on it. And I think our employees, everyone's got a family, everyone's got a life, everyone looks one way above the surface and is another way below the surface. And I do think you're making a great point that just talking more realistically, more truthfully about things. The culture is what makes Alaska so fantastic. We have a great culture, and the culture took a hit with that merger.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about the time commitment that your job took. What was like your typical day like?
There was a lot of, there were long days, and there was, for us, it was a family affair. My wife, Danielle, did a terrific job of sort of holding everything together. We've got 3 fantastic kids. I did make it. I'm not one of these people that, he was at whatever, every volleyball game. That wasn't me. There's a great family story of me showing up at an end of year banquet with one of the volleyball players saying, "Who's the guy in the blue shirt?" But I don't know. It is kind of a family affair. You're up early every day. You're going in. There's something, there's a rhythm to running the business. There's reports you look at, closing meetings, market meetings, all of that. There might be union agreements that you're trying to get through. You're trying to get negotiated. There's new markets. There's new airplanes. We wanted to be super involved in our communities. That's kind of the Alaska thing. So we're volunteering on nonprofit boards, candidly, I don't want to exaggerate, but there were many nights. There was something every single night, of the week. So you're working all day and doing something, and like for sure the average is 3 or 4 nights a week. So there's a lot to it, but I realized what an honor and a privilege having the role I had was, and my wife did, our kids did. People were, I know that even our kids feel like they made some sacrifice, but I think they feel like our family got goodness out of it. They got to do things, they got to see things. You get to, one of the neat things about a job like that is you get to know the leaders of all these different companies, and you get insights that you didn't have before. So there are silver linings, but honestly, when you're a grandpa, you're in makeup mode now. That's where I am.
Oh, that's good. That's good. I remember I sent you an email. So in 2019, Monica's grandmother passed.
Yeah.
And I know in the past you've said as a CEO you were always on. And I know that to be true because we were approaching the holidays. Monica was having a really hard time, right? And I was trying to think, what could I do to maybe help her kind of bring that kind of memory right back? And Alaska at the time was building this new building, this hub, and they had these paver stones, and they were raising money for the Employee Assistance Fund, right?
Right.
And so you could donate some money and have a thing engraved. And I thought, that's going to be awesome. I'm going to have it say like in loving memory of Grandma Shirley or something, right? But of course, me wanting to film it and make a video, I sent you an email December 21st.
Oh my gosh.
4 days before Christmas, like, "Hey, Brad, this is Brendan. I'm a pilot here. I don't suppose you'd want to record a little video and just let Monica know, hey, we're doing this." Because I thought that'd be a cool way to do it. And I thought, this is going nowhere. I don't know what I'm doing. Hit send. Don't even think about it. The very next day, which I think is your birthday too.
It actually is.
And
my little brother and sister on the 21st. So,
oh, really?
Yeah.
I kid you not, the very next day I get an email back. "Hey, Brendan, this is Brad. Shoot me your cell phone number. I just recorded a video and I'll get that sent over to you."
Nice.
And you sent it over, and you were in your office on December 22nd, your birthday, working. And I just thought, gosh, he is on nonstop. Did you ever see that video?
No, okay. I don't think I did.
It's just a short little 2.
Are we going to look at it?
Yeah.
Nice.
It's just a short little like 2.5 minute video here. The first gift of Christmas.
Who's this from?
It's from all of us.
Oh my
Drum roll. What? This is a big production. We've got camera 1, camera 2, camera 3, and Mike. I'm so nervous. What could this be? Mommy. I was just saying that I didn't have any pictures of her up. Oh, that's my favorite picture.
Grandma Shirley. She's always with you.
Sweetie, I know how tough this past year has been on you, especially with the loss of your grandma. You showed so much strength and beauty as you cared for her during her final months with us. We often count our blessings together as a couple, but today my biggest joy is having you as my wife.
Always apart. Okay, are you ready for the next one? All pretend.
As we move forward beyond this year, I know Grandma will be walking beside us with that big grandma smile. I love you so much.
This is the other part of the gift.
What?
Hi, Monica. This is Brad Tilden talking with you from Alaska Airlines today. And I'm talking to you because your husband told me a little bit about your grandmother, Shirley. And let me tell you something else first. So we are building a building across the street. We're going to call it the Hub or the Copper River Project. And in that building, there's going to be pavers where people can buy a paver to honor somebody that was important in their life. So Brendan told me how important your grandmother Shirley was to you and your 3 kids, and what a fantastic lady she was. And so there's going to be a paver in front of that building honoring your grandmother. So, but Merry Christmas. I hope you have a fantastic break, and I hope you come see the paver when the new building's open, which should be something March, April, May timeframe. Thanks very much. Merry Christmas.
She loves you so much.
Look, right next to the airplanes.
You are you're a great husband, also a great father. I mean, for your kids to be part of that, it's
Well, we don't often get to see the end outcomes of our own kindness, right? And so, from our family to yours, thank you so much for everything that you've given.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for saying that. It's been fun. I've been lucky, and
as you look back, what do you think is like the overarching memory of your time with the airline?
There's a couple things that really come to mind. Like, I think it's changed how it's measured now, but there was a time period when we won 12 J.D. Power Awards for customer service in a row, and honestly, pilots have a lot to do that. Flight attendants and res agents and customer service agents have an enormous amount to do with that. It was always close. We actually never thought we had it. We thought it would be us or somebody, and several times when we actually got the news, we were with employees. It might be at a recurrent class or something like that. And just seeing that pride, it bounce off their faces, reflect off them. It was fantastic. The other thing I'll say, and this happened more later in my career, but you realize, I don't know, like one of my jobs was to prepare the company for when I leave, and so like getting an Andrew Harrison or Shane Tackett or Ben Minicucci or some of these guys just into the roles that they're going to be moving into, and just honestly relaxing a little bit, lightening up a little bit, having fun with them, letting them poke fun at you, which they did, a lot of, just having fun with leaders, grow together, allow yourself to grow, just get more comfortable with, hey, I didn't do this well, I screwed this up, blah, I think I screwed this up. What do you guys think? Yeah, we think you screwed it up, but if you can lead that way, then it invites them to think about their own leadership and what they can do. And so I don't like the tight answer to your question is it's the people. It's not, I love the machines. I fly airplanes many times a month still. I love them. I love the markets. I love going to New York. I love how big we are in Hawaii. But the memories, the people. Yeah. No doubt about it.
Well, we know you're very busy, so you've been very kind with your time. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Brandon. I've
this has been a lot of fun.
Yeah,
this has been a lot of fun. And for everyone listening, thank you so much for taking the time to check out the podcast. We'll see you next time.